Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet.
Have you ever noticed that life has impeccable timing? Not good timing necessarily, just impeccable timing. It doesn't wait until you're rested. It doesn't check your calendar. It simply shows up. It happens. You can't plan for everything. And sometimes, well, there's a plot twist that you never saw. Now, you may recall last week I was talking about my trip to Reno. And when we returned home from our Reno baseball trip, it was Sunday and we rolled our suitcases into the house. We were tired, happy, already talking about unpacking, but I said, I'll do that tomorrow. I did what I usually do. I throw the suitcase on the guest bed and relax and settle back into being home. What's in the fridge? What do we need to do? Stuff like that there. But it turned out tomorrow, that Monday, had very different plans. The next morning, I woke up with one of those mysterious stomach bugs that leaves you completely depleted. All the unpleasantness, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting. And by the end of the afternoon, I had nothing left in the tank. I was just waiting for bedtime and hoping that I would sleep it off because the next day I just wanted to feel better. As it grew closer to the end of the afternoon, it got darker quicker than it should because the clouds were rolling in. And the wind picked up and the sky turned an eerie shade of orange. When you've lived in Arizona for a while, you know that when the sky turns orange like that, it's time for monsoon. Now, here's the interesting thing. Monsoon, the wind, the thunder, the lightning, doesn't always mean rain. They actually have a word for it. It's called a haboob, and it's when the dust rolls in this giant wall. The wind sweeps across the desert, picking up layers of dust, and then coating the world in orange. Red rust? It's a haboob. I know, a giggle-worthy description for certain. Like every time I say haboob, I have a little, fifth grader in me going, hee, haboob, hee. But that night, after the orange skies, the rain came. Not a gentle summer rain, torrents of rain. 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts accompanied it, and lightnings with flashes were going across the sky. It was really quite gorgeous. Now, most of the year, our weather is relentless heat and dryness, not rain. And over time, that sun and that heat quietly works on all the man-made things that we put out there, including roofing materials and all that. Tiny weaknesses develop that you never notice until the rain arrives. Now, I'd heard flat roofs in Arizona could be a problem when the rain finally came. So when we bought a house with a flat roof, every time it rained, I was so careful. I would inspect the whole house. I'd be actually sniffing to see if I could smell damp drywall or rain inside the house, looking for any telltale sign that rain had made its way into the house. The only place we'd ever had trouble was in the skylights. We repaired some, recaulked others, and we always had a couple buckets handy in case a new leak developed. So as the rain started that evening, I did exactly what we always do. I checked the skylights. Everything looked fine. And satisfied, I wandered out onto the lanai. It's a covered patio that has become one of my favorite places in the house. And not feeling that great, I settled into a comfortable chair and I watched those sheets of rain sweep across the backyard and lightning dancing across the sky. The wind bent the trees in one direction and then another, their branches swaying and twisting with each powerful gust. The whole scene was strangely calming, almost hypnotic. I even spotted the owl that visits our yard most evenings at twilight. She darted from tree to tree, seemingly looking for shelter as the storm rolled through. And I watched her for a long time. Now, after the miserable day I'd had, sitting there felt like medicine, a tonic for my soul. And eventually that rain ceased. And, well, didn't really cease. It kind of eased. It stopped being quite so dramatic. And the lightning moved further away, and the storm had passed. Just a light drizzle. And despite several naps that I had had throughout the day, I was fading fast. It was time for bed. Skip gently guided my wobbly self down the hallway toward our bedroom. And, our bedroom is on the opposite side of the house from the skylights I checked earlier. And there'd never been a problem back there. So, I was pretty confident. But then we saw it. Water. On the floor. In the hallway. Just outside the guest bedroom. And for a second, I simply stared, does not compute. What's going on? And then we moved in to investigate. I probably shouldn't have flipped the light switch. Hindsight's always 20/20, but I did, and mercifully nothing wrong came of that, other than the ceiling light wasn't working. And we flipped the bedside lamp on and suddenly realized there was water dripping from the ceiling, splashing onto the ceiling fan and spraying that water just about everywhere. Squish, 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 our feet went through the carpet. It was raining inside my house. Yay! Remember those suitcases I planned to unpack tomorrow? They were still on the guest bed, directly beneath the leak, completely soaked. Water is desperately needed here in the Southwest. We actually have some real bad drought conditions, but I didn't need it to be raining in my guest bedroom. Now remember, I am weak as a kitten. I have spent most of my day in the bathroom. Just seconds ago, Skip was actually helping me walk down the hallway because I was done. Done. But with this new impetus, I found the energy to do what needed to be done. We emptied that room. We dragged suitcases out onto the lanai, hung soaking clothes over drying racks and patio furniture. We had to disassemble the bed, which was directly beneath that ceiling fan, and wrestle a mattress that now was fully loaded with water and weighed what felt like a ton. And we dragged it outside to dry. By the time we finally stopped, that guest room no longer looked like a bedroom. It looked like the aftermath of a very localized disaster. Oh, I guess in its own way it was. Now, it's now a little over a week later. And as you can tell, my beverage has changed today because it just matched the tone of the episode for me. For those of you that aren't watching the YouTube video, I'm drinking a beer, folks. Service Master has been here almost every day. The first day, they removed the soaked carpet and inspected the walls and the ceilings. They have these great tools that actually go and don't actually cut into the wall, but they can measure the moisture that's in there. Like, how cool is that? It's like something out of Star Trek. Little tricorder. Water. Nope, no water. It was amazing. Anyway, now today they opened up the ceiling, which after they discovered there was no asbestos. Thank goodness. Little blessings. And they've been here almost every day, doing something almost every day. And over this last week, we've met with insurance adjusters. We've hired a contractor. We have to make so many decisions. Should we change the color of the room while we're at it? I mean, if you're going to gut it, does it have to be the same room when you put it back together? We're going to have to paint. We're going to have to get new carpet. What starts as one leak quickly becomes 20 decisions you never expected to make. Repair or replace the entire roof. What's the right thing to do? And of course, all the while, life keeps chugging quietly along. It's not like everything stops so that we can deal with this. There's no pause button in life. Isn't that how life works? The event itself was only the beginning. The real work is everything that follows. It feels as though the weather has been making headlines everywhere. Just this morning, I turned on the TV, tornadoes, floods, forest fires, and the aftermath of those fires, the smoke that's blanketing parts of the country. It's crazy. Rivers are flowing over their banks, forests are burning, communities are underwater. Some communities are razed by these nasty tornadoes. And I look at the families as they begin the heartbreaking work of deciding what can be saved and what cannot. Against that backdrop, our leaking roof feels very small. Yeah, our house is damaged. Our lives are disrupted. We have a hole in the ceiling. We need to order new carpet, a new mattress. The list of phone calls we need to make is exceptionally long. There are repairs and insurance paperwork. Let's try that one again. Insurance paperwork. I swear I've barely had any of the spare. It's frustrating. It is exhausting. It is definitely inconvenient. But still, we have a home to repair. I'm looking at that news again, and others are facing everything gone. Entire neighborhoods, people losing photographs and keepsakes and pieces of their lives that can never be replaced. Worse yet, people losing people they love. But home is a place where we're supposed to feel safest. And when it's filled with uncertainty, it takes a toll, physical and emotional. If you've ever had such a little thing as losing a child's favorite toy or a treasured photograph or something big like losing your home or everything you own, my heart is with you. Okay. Every single loss carries its own kind of grief, and every storm leaves behind something different. It was interesting to realize how much my perspective changed, not only about the chaos in my house, but about the rain itself. During the storm, I sat on the lanai, mesmerized by the beauty of that storm. And the next morning, I found myself cursing that very rain that had poured into my guest room. Whew. I had to realize it wasn't the rain that created the problem. The rain revealed the problem. After months or years of relentless Arizona heat, the roof had weakened in places I couldn't see. Have you ever watched someone slowly begin to crack under the weight of life? Not just because of hardship, sometimes because of an abundance of blessings. A new baby, a promotion, a move, a wedding to plan, a new business. Even good things require energy and slowly add strain. Even joy can be exhausting. And then life piles on the things none of us would choose: a leak in the roof, a cancer diagnosis, losing a job, the death of someone you love. But then when you think about it, it's not the crisis that broke you. More often, it's years of tiny, invisible stress fractures. This crisis simply becomes the moment when that crack finally appears. The storm doesn't create the crack necessarily. It simply reveals where one has been forming all along. Now, I know we've all seen someone lose it over something that seems ridiculously small. I know I actually have been the person to do that. Have you? The grocery store puts the grocery store clerk, boy, I'm excited about this thought, puts the bread in the bottom of the bag, and you have a squished loaf of bread. The barista gets the coffee wrong. Someone cuts you off in traffic. And it's real tempting to let them have that entire load of frustration from everything that's come before. Because life's a lot sometimes. But that clerk or the bread, the bad coffee order, the driver who was too aggressive or didn't even see you, they weren't the problem necessarily. They were simply the raindrops that found a crack that had been forming for a long time. Growing up, we called it the straw that broke the camel's back. You get the metaphor. You can load so much on, and then all of a sudden that one last thing goes and breaks it all to pieces. But that one last straw would have been easy to carry if it were just that one last straw. But it's mounted on top of everything else, everything that came before. Maybe that's why plot twists feel so unsettling. I've been dealing with it. I've got 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 it. But then the plot twist comes and they expose how overstressed and overextended you already are, or I already am. Because this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. We all do it. And yet there is some good news. When storms come, they reveal more than damage. They reveal our resilience and our ability to deal with it. I still don't know how I found the strength to keep hauling furniture and wringing out clothes when just a few minutes earlier, I needed Skip to help me walk down the hallway. But when push came to shove, there wasn't time to say, why is this happening? There was just work to do. And I had to figure out, what can I use to catch the water? How do we save what's still dry? Where do we put yet another dripping object so it can dry out? There'll be time to mourn the losses later. We don't get to choose the storms. We don't get to choose where they'll find the crack. What we do get to choose is what happens next. And we clean up, we call for help, and we rebuild. And it was interesting because on reflection, I realized that even though it was just Skip and I wasn't facing that storm empty-handed or alone. Because each one of us carries the wisdom of the people who came before us. As I stood watching water drip out of the ceiling, I didn't panic. I grabbed a wallboard saw and cut a hole in the drywall. That was definitely something my dad would have done. Now, later I did discover Service Master has that cool toy, but I wouldn't have had that cool toy in that moment of panic. So I did what I needed to do to know if that water was going to go into the wall that is adjacent to my closet. And that would have been another nightmare. My closet had gotten wet. Mercifully, it stopped it before the wall. Thank God. Dad would have appreciated his Service Master school toy. And I think he also would have appreciated that I heard him in my head and decided to cut open that wall. It's been more than 10 years since my dad died. Almost exactly 10 years, actually. When I was younger, he would have been my first phone call. Dad, what do I do? I can't make that phone call anymore. Because he's still in my head. I don't have to. His voice lives in mine. His lessons still guide my hands. And as I hung all those wet objects over racks and things like that, that was my mom. And all the lessons I've learned from teachers, mentors, friends, the lessons I've learned by making mistakes, like, hey, don't have to cut in the drywall again. Good to know. And every storm that I've already survived. Each one left me with something I could carry into the next chapter. Now, this storm is going to be with us for a while. The furniture is piled in other rooms and has turned the house into an obstacle course. The industrial dehumidifier hums day and night. It's roughly like having a small jetliner kind of in the next room to our bedroom, which, interestingly, my poor husband can't sleep with that noise. And that white noise has made me sleep the best I've slept in a long time. I don't hear every pop and joint because I just hear that humming noise. I guess it all depends on how you react to it. But he's tired and grumpy because he hasn't slept well since those things started. Now that they've taken out the ceiling and tomorrow they're going to take out the dehumidifiers, I think that's when things will start to feel a little bit more settled. But we still got to reconstruct. Yeah. But anyway, storms do have a while of lingering long after the storm stops. It'll probably be well into September before that room is back to 100%. And our lives are back to pretty much the way they were before, except for the guest room will have a lovely fresh coat of paint and a new carpet, and a new mattress, and new bedding. Okay, there's a lot to be done. If someone had told me while I was sitting on that lanai, watching the rain, that same storm was pouring through my roof, I probably would have run inside. And I would have missed the owl and that wonderful, peaceful moment of watching the storm and its raw beauty. That storm was two things at once, beautiful and destructive, at exactly the same time. 30 years ago, the version of me that existed might not have known that that dichotomy was okay. At 60, I know that life will continue to have storms. This is probably not the last one I'll have to survive because we need rain in the valley and the snow in the mountains. But at this point, I've survived enough storms to know that perspective changes depending on where you're standing. On the lanai, the rain was beautiful. In the guest room, the rain was infuriating. And neither perspective is wrong. Storms reveal the cracks. They also reveal the strength we never realized we'd been building. And sometimes, if we're willing to look, they reveal wonder. That's what I've learned. And wonder isn't just found in the storm itself. It's found in the people who help us weather it. This week, I encourage you to take an inventory of the people who've helped you weather the storms. Reach back and thank at least one of them. Then look around. And someone else may need you to be that person for them, especially with all that's going on right now. Just yesterday, I had an impulse to send a friend a text. I didn't even know why. And I didn't know what to say because I didn't know why I had this feeling. And I just sent her the message saying, sending love your way. A few minutes later, I got a response. And the response was, thanks, I needed that. A friend of mine just died. You never know what good you're doing in the universe. Oh, and one final thought. Water belongs in you, not in your guest bedroom. Stay hydrated. I promise I'll have a water after this beer. And I'll talk to you next week.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation. Ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends. Join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.